Yo, what's good? Chrono Crew Legends. It's your boy Chronos back again, and things are getting absolutely wild in part 3 of What If Deku Had Mahoraga's Adaptation. Deku's power is pushing past human limits, and let's just say, the adaptation wheel, it ain't done spinning yet. I appreciate every single one of you who's been riding with me. Y'all are the real MVPs of the story. If you're new here, welcome to the Chrono Crew. Smash that like button. We're shooting for 100 likes to unlock the next evolution. Subscribe if you're vibing with the energy, and hit the bell so you never miss a drop from this alternate universe heat. The 3 days of mandatory rest following the USJ attack had been anything but restful for Izuku. While his physical body remained in his bedroom, his consciousness delved deep into the vestige world of One for All, training intensively with Nana Shimura and Daigoro Banjo. Within this metaphysical realm, time seemed to flow differently. Hours could pass in what felt like minutes, allowing for accelerated development of his abilities under the watchful guidance of his predecessors. "You're getting better at simultaneous activation," Nana observed as Izuku executed a complex maneuver combining float and black whip. But there's still hesitation between transitions. Izuku nodded, sweat beading on his mental projection despite the absence of a physical body in this space. "I'm still thinking of them as separate abilities rather than extensions of the same power." "Exactly," Daigoro confirmed, his spectral form circling around Izuku's training area. One for All isn't 8 different quirks, it's a single power with multiple expressions. Like fingers on the same hand. As Izuku prepared for another attempt, an unexpected shift occurred in the vestige world. The misty environment wavered, colors briefly inverting as a new presence materialized. A slender man with dark hair and sharp features, wearing what appeared to be an old-fashioned military uniform. Well, the newcomer remarked, studying Izuku with piercing eyes. "So this is All Might's successor. Interesting choice." Nana's expression brightened with recognition. I was wondering when you'd awaken." The boy's progress accelerated the timeline, the man, replied matter-of-factly. "His adaptation quirk has remarkable synergy with One for All. He's already achieved 50% control in mere months, something that took each of us years." Daigoro grinned, clapping Izuku on the shoulder. "Kid's a natural, that's for sure. Handling my black whip better than I did at first." Izuku bowed respectfully to the new vestige. "It's an honor to meet you, sir. May I ask which wielder you are?" "Ozaki, the 4th bearer of One for All." He introduced himself with a slight nod. "My original quirk was Smokescreen, the ability to generate and manipulate smoke for concealment and disorientation." A wave of excitement coursed through Izuku. "Another quirk?" "Indeed," confirmed, extending his hand. As he did, tendrils of dark smoke swirled around his fingers. "And one that will complement your existing abilities quite effectively. Float gives you aerial advantage, Black Whip provides range and grappling capability, and Smokescreen will now offer you concealment and tactical options." "The sports festival begins tomorrow," Nana interjected, her expression growing serious. "It's the perfect opportunity to test your expanded capabilities against diverse opponents." Nodded in agreement. "But use Smokescreen sparingly during public events. Unlike your other abilities, it's distinctly different from your registered quirk. Too much exposure could raise uncomfortable questions." "I understand," Izuku assured them, already contemplating how this new power might integrate with his existing arsenal. "Then let's begin," said, the smoke around his hand intensifying. "First, you must understand that Smokescreen isn't just about creating smoke, it's about controlling its density, direction, and duration." The remainder of Izuku's rest period was consumed by intensive training with learning to manifest and control clouds of dark smoke that could range from thin wisps to impenetrable walls of vapor. By the time morning dawned on the day of the sports festival, Izuku had gained basic proficiency with this new ability, able to generate smoke from any part of his body and direct its flow with reasonable precision. More importantly, he'd begun to understand what Daigoro and Nana had been emphasizing. These weren't separate quirks but different aspects of the same unified power. With practice, he could activate multiple abilities simultaneously without the mental compartmentalization that had previously limited him. As Izuku opened his eyes, returning fully to his physical body, the spectral wheel briefly manifested behind him, processing the new adaptations before fading from view. He felt different, stronger, more integrated, as though the various powers flowing through him had begun to harmonize rather than compete. "The sports festival," he murmured, stretching muscles that felt energized despite his extended period of mental exertion. "Time to show what I can really do." UA's annual sports festival was more than just a school competition, it was Japan's most watched sporting event, surpassing even the Olympics in national viewership. For Hero Course students, it represented a crucial opportunity to showcase their abilities to pro heroes seeking interns and sidekicks. Class 1A gathered in their waiting room, each student processing the pressure in their own way. Kaminari and Ishido chatted nervously, Todoroki meditated in solitude, and Bakugo radiated his usual combative aura from the corner. Izuku sat quietly, reviewing his strategy notes while occasionally glancing at the clock. After the USJ incident, public interest in UA's first years had skyrocketed, meaning even more scrutiny than usual would be focused on their performance today. Nervous? Kendo asked, settling into the seat beside him. Her orange hair was tied back more severely than usual, her expression focused and determined. A little, Izuku admitted, but mostly excited. This is what we've been working toward. Kendo smiled, bumping his shoulder lightly with her own. You'll do great. Just try not to completely overshadow the rest of us with those fancy new powers of yours. Before Izuku could respond, the door to their waiting room slid open, revealing Todoroki's distinctive half-red, half-white hair. The dual-colored boy stepped inside, heterochromatic eyes immediately locking onto Izuku. Midoriya, he said, his voice cold and direct. A word. Conversation throughout the room faltered as classmates turned to observe this unexpected confrontation. Todoroki rarely initiated interactions with anyone, making this approach particularly noteworthy. Izuku nodded, setting aside his notebook. Of course, Todoroki-kun. Todoroki didn't wait for further acknowledgement, stepping back into the hallway with the clear expectation that Izuku would follow. After exchanging a puzzled glance with Kendo, Izuku did just that, closing the door behind them to provide some privacy from their curious classmates. What's this about? Izuku asked once they were alone. Todoroki studied him with calculating intensity, mismatched eyes narrowed slightly. You're strong, he stated flatly. Possibly the strongest in our class. All Might has taken a special interest in you. Izuku tensed slightly but kept his expression neutral. All Might is interested in all his students. Not like he is with you, Todoroki countered, his voice remaining level despite the accusatory content. I watched your fight against that creature at USJ. Your power, it's reminiscent of his. A chill ran down Izuku's spine, but he managed to maintain his composure. My adaptation quirk allows me to develop counters to threats I encounter. Fighting alongside All Might against such a powerful opponent pushed my adaptation further than ever before. Todoroki's expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced, but he didn't press that particular issue further. Instead, his demeanor shifted subtly, becoming even more rigid. I'm going to beat you, he declared with quiet intensity. What? The sudden declaration caught Izuku off guard. My father is the number 2 hero. Endeavor, Todoroki continued, his right hand unconsciously drifting toward the burn scar covering his left eye. He's been obsessed with surpassing All Might for decades. When he couldn't accomplish that himself, he created me for that purpose. Izuku's eyes widened as the implications settled in. Created you? What do you mean? A quirk marriage, Todoroki explained, bitterness seeping into his previously emotionless voice. He forced my mother into marriage for her ice quirk, wanting to combine it with his flames to produce a child that could surpass All Might. The temperature in the hallway dropped noticeably as frost began to form on the wall beside Todoroki's right side. I refused to use his power, Todoroki continued, raising his left hand, the side that controlled fire. I'll reject his ambitions by winning this festival using only my mother's ice. And that means defeating you, the student All Might has chosen to focus on. Izuku listened silently, recognizing the pain beneath Todoroki's cold exterior. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. I don't know what happened between you and your father, Todoroki-kun, but your power is yours, not his. Todoroki's eyes narrowed. What? Your quirk is part of you, regardless of where it came from, Izuku continued, conviction growing with each word. Limiting yourself to spite someone else isn't winning. It's another form of letting them control you. The temperature dropped further as Todoroki's expression darkened. You don't understand anything about my situation. Maybe not, Izuku acknowledged, but I understand what it means to be a hero. And a true hero uses everything at their disposal to save people and win. For a moment, genuine emotion flickered across Todoroki's usually stoic face. Not anger, but something more complex. Confusion. Perhaps even a hint of recognition. Before either could speak further, Ida appeared at the end of the hallway, his robotic arm movements as precise as ever. Everyone is gathering for the opening ceremony. As class representatives, we should be leading by example. Todoroki held Izuku's gaze for one final moment. I've said what I needed to say. I will defeat you. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving a trail of frost in his wake. Izuku watched him go, mind racing with the implications of their conversation. Todoroki's declaration wasn't just about competition. It was a cry for help disguised as a challenge. I'll help you see the truth about your power, Todoroki-kun, Izuku thought, determination crystallizing within him. by defeating you with everything I have. Welcome, sports fans, to UA's annual sports festival. Present Mix amplified voice boomed throughout the massive stadium where tens of thousands of spectators had gathered to watch the event. This year's first-year stage is about to begin, and boy, do we have some extraordinary competitors for you. In the stadium tunnel, Class 1A prepared to make their entrance, nervous energy palpable among the students. Izuku adjusted his PE uniform, taking deep breaths to center himself before stepping into the spotlight. Remember, Ida announced to the class, chopping the air with characteristic enthusiasm, we represent UA's hero course. Conduct yourselves with dignity and sportsmanship. Yeah, Bakugo growled, cracking his knuckles aggressively. Just stay out of my way once the real competition starts. Uraraka bounced nervously beside Izuku. I can't believe how many people are out there. It's like the entire country is watching. They are, Yayarosa confirmed matter-of-factly. The viewership ratings for the sports festival typically exceed 80% nationwide. Now, entering the stadium, the survivors of the villain attack, the students of Hero Course Class 1A, Present Mike announced dramatically. Taking a collective breath, the class stepped out into the blinding sunlight and deafening roar of the crowd. The vast stadium stretched before them, filled to capacity with spectators eager to witness the next generation of heroes in action. Izuku felt a momentary surge of anxiety at the sheer scale of attention, but it quickly transformed into determination. This was his chance to declare his presence to the world, to take another step toward becoming the hero he aspired to be. As the remaining classes entered the stadium, 1B from the hero course, followed by the support, general studies, and business departments, Midnight took center stage as the chief referee, her provocative hero costume drawing whistles from the crowd. Silence, everyone, she commanded, cracking her flogger-style whip for emphasis. It's time for the player pledge. She turned toward the assembled students, gesturing dramatically. Representing the first-year students, Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A. A murmur of surprise ran through the UA students as Izuku casually made his way to the podium. He exchanged glances with Kendo and Ida. This should be interesting, Kendo muttered sarcastically. Izuku stood before the microphone, his expression utterly serious. After a moment of tense silence, he spoke. I used to think being a hero meant having a smile that never broke, a heart that never cracked, a body that could take anything without falling. But now I know the truth. Power doesn't come without pain. Growth doesn't come without change, and sometimes the thing that helps you protect others can also start to tear you apart. This adaptation I carry, it doesn't make me unstoppable. It makes me responsible for every life I couldn't save, every scar I've earned, every mistake I've had to grow from. But even if my body changes, even if I become something the world doesn't understand, I won't forget who I am. I'm still Izuku Midoriya. I'm still a student of UA, and I'm still aiming to be the greatest hero this world has ever seen. One who adapts not just to survive, but to protect. To inspire. To carry the pain so no one else has to. So if you're watching this, and you're scared of change, or afraid you're becoming something different, don't run from it. Use it, own it, and stand tall. Because even a monster can choose to be a hero. The declaration was met with immediate applause and cheers from the other classes and the viewers. That was amazing, Kaminari said. As Izuku returned to his position, smiling at the riled-up students, Midnight retook center stage. Without further ado, let's get started with the first event, the qualifier that will determine who advances to the main competition. Behind her, a massive holographic screen lit up, rapidly cycling through various event options before settling on obstacle race. All 11 classes will participate in this race around the stadium's outer perimeter, approximately 4 kilometers. Midnight explained, her voice sultry despite the professional content. As long as you stay on the course, anything is allowed. Take your positions at the starting gate. The students clustered at the narrow exit tunnel that would serve as the starting point, a bottleneck designed to create immediate competition. Izuku positioned himself strategically, analyzing the narrow space and the competitors around him. Kendo appeared beside him, her expression focused. Good luck, Midoriya-kun. I'll see you at the finish line. Same to you, he replied with a smile. Let's both give it our best. Across the crowd, he caught Todoroki's cold stare and Bakugo's challenging glare, both clearly considering him their primary rival. The pressure was exhilarating rather than intimidating, fueling his determination to succeed. Racers, take your positions. Present Mike announced as a countdown appeared on the holographic displays. 3, 2, 1. Start. The signal lights flashed green and chaos erupted immediately as hundreds of students surged toward the narrow exit. Bodies pressed against each other, creating a human traffic jam that slowed everyone's progress. Izuku activated full cowling at 30%, green energy crackling subtly around his form as he calculated his approach. He could easily force his way through using his enhanced strength, but that risked injuring other participants. Before he could decide, the temperature plummeted dramatically. Glancing ahead, he saw Todoroki sliding forward on a path of ice, simultaneously creating a massive glacier behind him that immobilized dozens of students caught in its expansion. A brilliant first move by Shoto Todoroki from Class 1A, Present Mike narrated enthusiastically. He's not just advancing himself, but obstructing his competitors. The ice surged toward Izuku with alarming speed. Without hesitation, he channeled one for all to 45%, drawing back his fist. Smash! He shouted, delivering a controlled punch that shattered Todoroki's glacier into thousands of glittering fragments. Incredible! Izuku Midoriya counters with devastating power, clearing the path for himself and others. Present Mix's voice echoed throughout the stadium as the crowd roared in appreciation. Using the momentary advantage, Izuku activated Black Whip and Float simultaneously. The dark energy tendrils shot outward, wrapping around structural supports ahead while Float negated his weight, allowing him to create a makeshift slingshot effect. What the? Todoroki glanced back just in time to see Izuku catapult past him, black tendrils retracting as he soared overhead. Look at that mobility! Present Mike exclaimed. Midoriya's unusual quirk continues to surprise. Landing ahead of the pack, Izuku immediately encountered the first official obstacle, a field of massive robots identical to those used in the entrance exam, including several zero-pointers towering above the course. Every obstacle course needs obstacles, Present Mike announced gleefully. Presenting the first barrier, Robo Inferno. Todoroki had already caught up, frost emanating from his right side as he approached the mechanical guardians. With a sweeping gesture, he created a massive wave of ice that immobilized a zero-pointer from the ground up. Too easy, Present Mike commented. Look out, that's cold. Izuku watched as Todoroki ducked beneath the frozen robot, continuing forward, but the ice had destabilized the machine's structure. With a groaning creak, the zero-pointer began to collapse, threatening to crush the students attempting to follow Todoroki's path. Without hesitation, Izuku leaped upward, activating full cowling at 50%. The adaptation wheel briefly manifested behind him as he delivered a devastating kick to the falling robot, altering its trajectory away from the other participants. Such heroic spirit. Midoriya risks his lead to protect his fellow competitors. Present Mix's commentary was accompanied by appreciative cheers from the crowd. Bakugo rocketed past, using his explosions for propulsion. Stupid Deku! This isn't a rescue exercise. Refocusing on the race, Izuku deployed Black Whip again, using the tendrils to swing between robots like an acrobat, maintaining his forward momentum while avoiding direct confrontation with the mechanical obstacles. The integration of Float allowed him to change direction mid-air with precision previously impossible. Emerging from the robot field, he immediately faced the second obstacle, a series of narrow pillars rising from a seemingly bottomless canyon, connected by thin ropes. The second barrier, the fall, Present Mike announced. Those who fall are out. Just kidding. They'll be retrieved, but they're disqualified. Todoroki had already begun crossing, creating ice platforms to bridge the gaps. Bakugo maintained his aerial approach, explosions propelling him from pillar to pillar. Other students employed various creative uses of their quirks to navigate the treacherous terrain. Izuku considered his options briefly before making a bold decision. Combining Float with full cowling at 45%, he positioned himself at the edge of the canyon. Detroit Smash, he called, delivering a powerful punch backward. The resulting air pressure launched him forward like a human missile, while Float allowed him to control his trajectory. He soared over the entire canyon in a single bound, bypassing the obstacle entirely. What an incredible display of power and control! Present Mike shouted as the crowd erupted in cheers. Midoriya takes back the lead, landing smoothly on the other side. Izuku immediately encountered the final obstacle, a vast minefield stretching ahead to the finish line. Small mounds of dirt indicated the placement of explosive devices, designed to be non-lethal but powerful enough to significantly impede progress. The final barrier, the minefield. The mines won't kill you, but they'll definitely slow you down. Todoroki and Bakugo had nearly caught up, both closing the distance rapidly. Other frontrunners, including Kendo, Ida, and several Class 1B students, were not far behind. Izuku quickly assessed the situation. Proceeding cautiously would cost valuable time, while rushing risked triggering explosions that would erase his lead. He needed a creative solution. A strategy formed in his mind, bold and risky but potentially decisive. Using Black Whip, he began rapidly excavating multiple mines from the ground, careful not to trigger them prematurely. Within moments, he had gathered a substantial cluster of explosives into a single location. What's he doing? Present Mike questioned, voicing the confusion of spectators. Todoroki and Bakugo had reached the minefield now, both proceeding more cautiously to avoid triggering explosions. They were gaining ground quickly. Just as they approached, Izuku positioned himself on top of his collected mines, using a piece of debris from earlier obstacles as a makeshift shield beneath his feet. "Are you insane?" Bakugo shouted, recognizing Izuku's intent. With a determined expression, Izuku activated float at low power, just enough to slightly reduce his weight while maintaining enough pressure to trigger the mines and stomp down hard. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, far larger than any single mine could produce. A massive pink blast propelled Izuku skyward with such force that the shockwave knocked both Todoroki and Bakugo off their feet. An incredible strategic move by Midoriya. Present Mike screamed in excitement as the crowd went wild. He's using the obstacle against itself. Soaring through the air, Izuku maintained control using float, adjusting his trajectory toward the finish line. As he began to descend, he spotted Todoroki and Bakugo recovering, both launching themselves forward with renewed determination. Izuku landed roughly at the edge of the minefield, immediately breaking into a sprint enhanced by full cowling. Behind him, he heard the distinctive sounds of Todoroki's ice formation and Bakugo's explosions, both gaining ground rapidly. The finish line approached, the tunnel leading back into the stadium now visible ahead. With a final burst of speed, Izuku channeled one for all through his entire body, pushing to 50% as he made his final sprint. "It's going to be close," Present Mike announced as the three leaders converged on the tunnel. "Who will take first place?" With mere meters remaining, Izuku felt Bakugo's heat at his right shoulder and saw Todoroki's frost to his left. In that crucial moment, he executed a perfect Delaware smash with his index finger, the air pressure providing just enough additional propulsion to surge ahead. "Izuku Midoriya takes first place," Present Mike roared as Izuku crossed the finish line, arms raised in triumph. Followed by Shoto Todoroki and Katsuki Bakugo, the stadium erupted in cheers as Izuku slowed to a stop, panting heavily but exhilarated by his victory. The adaptation wheel had briefly appeared during his final sprint, processing the strain of maintaining 50% throughout his body, but disappeared almost immediately, evidence of his growing control. Todoroki approached, his expression a mixture of respect and renewed determination. "This isn't over, Midoriya," he stated quietly. "The real competition is just beginning." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Izuku replied sincerely. As other competitors began finishing the race, Izuku spotted Kendo crossing in 8th place, followed closely by their other classmates. Their eyes met briefly, and she gave him a congratulatory thumbs up despite her own exhaustion. Once 42 students had completed the course, Midnight returned to center stage. "The first event is complete. These 42 students will advance to the second round. Take a brief rest while we prepare the next competition." Izuku accepted water from a support staff member, reflecting on his performance. He'd successfully integrated multiple aspects of One for All, maintaining control even under pressure. Yet he'd been careful not to reveal too much, keeping Smokescreen in reserve and limiting his power output to reasonable levels. The next challenge would likely require different tactics, possibly more teamwork. As he hydrated and stretched his muscles, he mentally prepared for whatever test awaited, knowing that with each obstacle overcome, his body adapted further, growing stronger in ways that extended beyond mere physical capabilities. The adaptation wheel had begun to change him in more profound ways than he'd initially realized. Not just his body, but his instincts, his tactical thinking, his very approach to heroism. And with each new vestige awakening within One for All, these changes would only accelerate. "The second event of the UA Sports Festival is about to begin," Present Mike announced as the students reassembled in the central arena. "But what could it possibly be?" Midnight cracked her whip for attention, her expression playfully sadistic. "The second event will be a cavalry battle." The holographic screens displayed an illustration of the event, teams of students forming horses with one person riding on top as the rider. "Participants will form teams of 2 to 4 people," Midnight explained. "The rules are simple. Snatch your opponent's headbands while protecting your own. Each headband will be worth points based on the wearer's ranking in the first event." She gestured dramatically at the scoreboard, which displayed the point values for each position. The points assigned increased by 5 from the bottom up, so 42nd place is worth 5 points, 41st is worth 10 points, and so on. With one exception, her gaze fixed directly on Izuku, a predatory smile curving her lips. "First place is worth 10 million points." Every eye in the stadium immediately turned toward Izuku, expressions transforming from friendly competition to predatory focus in an instant. The atmosphere shifted palpably, killing intent directed at him from all sides. The player on top of each formation will wear a headband displaying their total points. Midnight continued, clearly enjoying the tension she'd created. Any headbands you capture must be worn around the neck or higher. If your formation falls or loses its headband, you can keep fighting until time expires. Now, you have 15 minutes to form your teams. As students immediately scattered to form strategic alliances, Izuku found himself suddenly isolated. Everyone now viewing him as the primary target rather than a desirable teammate. 10 million points, he muttered, processing the implications. They all need to come after me to have any chance of advancing. Looks like you've got a target on your back, Kendo commented, approaching while others maintained their distance. Want to team up? I figure you could use at least one ally you trust. Relief washed over Izuku. Absolutely. Your big fist quirk would be perfect for defense. Their planning was interrupted by the arrival of Uraraka, her usual cheerfulness slightly diminished by nervous determination. Deku-kun, let's team up, she suggested brightly. That would be great. Izuku agreed immediately, grateful for another friendly face. Your zero gravity would give us incredible mobility options, and I believe I could contribute valuable support as well, came Tokoyami's deep voice as he joined their small group, dark shadow manifesting briefly behind him. My quirk provides both offensive and defensive capabilities. Izuku nodded enthusiastically. With your dark shadow, we'd have 360-degree protection. This is perfect. As the four students began strategizing, Izuku outlined his approach. Everyone will be targeting us for the 10 million points, so we need to focus entirely on evasion rather than capturing other headbands. Agreed, Tokoyami said solemnly. Defense is our priority. I can use Big Fist to create barriers when needed, Kendo added, demonstrating by enlarging both hands to massive proportions, and to swat away anyone who gets too close. And my zero gravity can make our formation lighter and more maneuverable, Uraraka concluded, tapping her fingertips together. Though I still have a weight limit and time restriction before nausea kicks in. Izuku nodded, formulating their final arrangement. I'll be the rider since I have the 10 million points. Kendo and Tokoyami will form the front and sides of our horse with Uraraka at the back. This gives us the best combination of defense and mobility. While other teams continued forming around them, Izuku observed their opponents carefully, noting particularly dangerous combinations. Todoroki had assembled a powerful team including Ida, Yaoyorozu, and Kaminari, a formation with exceptional offensive capabilities. Bakugo, unsurprisingly, had Kirishima for durability, along with Shiro and Ishido for mobility and area control. Time's up, Midnight announced. All teams, take your positions for the cavalry battle. Izuku settled into position atop his team's formation, securing the 10 million point headband around his forehead. The adaptation wheel briefly flickered behind him as his body prepared for the coming challenge, processing strategies and potential threats in real time. Remember, he told his teammates quietly, we just need to survive until time expires. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Riders, to your battle formations, President Mike called out. The countdown begins. 3, 2, 1. Start. The moment the signal sounded, nearly every team in the arena converged on Izuku's formation, creating a stampede of competitors all fixated on the 10 million points. Just as expected, Tokoyami commented dryly as Dark Shadow expanded to create a protective barrier around their front. Uraraka, now! Izuku commanded. Right? She responded, touching each of her teammates and activating her quirk. Their formation immediately became weightless, allowing them to leap backward with minimal effort, evading the initial rush of opponents. An impressive escape by Team Midoriya, President Mike narrated excitedly. Using Uraraka's zero gravity to achieve unparalleled mobility, several teams redirected their pursuit, but Kendo's enlarged hands swatted away approaching formations, while Tokoyami's dark shadow kept others at bay. Their defensive strategy was working perfectly, until Todoroki's team approached from the flank. Yaoyorozu, now Todoroki commanded calmly. The creation hero produced an insulated blanket that Todoroki immediately froze, creating a massive ice wall that cut off Team Midoriya's retreat path. We're boxed in, Kendo warned as other teams closed in from the remaining directions. Izuku assessed the situation rapidly. They needed more than just evasion now, they needed to create space. This called for a calculated risk. Hold tight, he instructed before activating full cowling at 40%, the green energy becoming more visible as his power increased. I'm going to clear a path, channeling one for all through his arm. He delivered a controlled smash toward the ground, creating a powerful shockwave that disrupted the approaching formations and cracked the stadium floor. The force generated enough space for their team to maneuver again, but the display of power had also intensified the other competitors' determination. Team Todoroki isn't giving up. Uraraka warned as Ida positioned their formation for another approach. Prepare for reciprocal burst. Ida announced to his teammates, blue flames suddenly erupting from his engine calves. 3 seconds of ultimate speed. Before Izuku could react, Ida's team moved with blinding velocity, appearing directly beside them in an instant. Todoroki's hand reached out, fingers brushing the edge of Izuku's headband. In that critical moment, acting purely on instinct, Izuku activated smokescreen. Dark vapor erupted from his body, obscuring their formation in an impenetrable cloud just as Todoroki's fingertips touched the headband. What's this? Midoriya has deployed some kind of smoke cover. Present Mike exclaimed in surprise. Another facet of his mysterious adaptation quirk? Using the momentary confusion, Izuku directed his team to retreat while maintaining the smoke cover. When they emerged from the cloud seconds later, they were across the arena, having completely evaded capture. That was close, Kendo commented, glancing back at Izuku with renewed curiosity about his abilities. I didn't know smoke generation was part of your quirk. It's a recent adaptation, Izuku explained vaguely, relieved that the smoke had dispersed before anyone could examine it too closely. Useful for situations like this. Their respite was short-lived as Bakugo's team approached from above, the explosive teen propelling himself into the air with consecutive blasts. Die, Deku! He roared, hands crackling with nitroglycerin sweat as he descended toward Izuku's headband. Tokoyami's dark shadow intercepted, clashing with Bakugo mid-air, while Kendo simultaneously enlarged her hand to create a barrier between the teams. The collision of quirks created enough force to push both formations apart, maintaining the stalemate. 5 minutes remaining in the cavalry battle. Midnight announced. Team Midoriya still holds the 10 million points, but for how long? They're coordinating now, Izuku observed as several teams, including Todoroki's and Bakugo's, began strategically positioning themselves to cut off escape routes. We need a decisive move. Analyzing the arena layout, Izuku formulated a plan. Uraraka, maximum lightness. Tokoyami, full extension of dark shadow. Kendo, prepare for impact absorption on landing. Uraraka touched each teammate again, reducing their weight to near zero. Simultaneously, Izuku activated float at low power, providing directional control without revealing the quirk's full capabilities. When I give the signal, jump with everything you've got, he instructed. As the encirclement tightened around them, Todoroki's team approached from the front, ice spreading across the ground to immobilize their formation. At the same time, Bakugo launched himself overhead, perfectly positioned to dive for the headband. Now! Izuku shouted. Their formation leaped with incredible height and distance, sailing over the heads of their opponents and toward the edge of the arena. Dark shadow extended beneath them, cushioning their trajectory, while Kendo's enlarged hands prepared for landing. What a move! Team Midoriya completely evades the coordinated attack. Present mixed commentary was nearly drowned out by the roaring crowd, clearly impressed by the display. Just as they were about to land safely, Izuku sensed danger. Todoroki had anticipated their maneuver, sending a massive wave of ice to intercept their landing zone. Simultaneously, several other teams converged on their projected touchdown point. Change of plans. Izuku called out. Uraraka, release on my mark. At precisely the right moment, Uraraka deactivated her quirk while Izuku channeled one for all into his legs. The sudden return of weight combined with his enhanced strength allowed him to direct their descent with pinpoint accuracy, landing their formation in the small uncovered area between approaching teams. The impact created a shockwave that disrupted the nearby formations, buying them precious seconds to reorient. The adaptation will briefly appeared behind Izuku, processing the complex coordination of abilities and the physical strain of the landing. 1 minute remaining. Midnight announced as the competition reached its climax. They're making their final push, Tokoyami warned, dark shadow expanding defensively as multiple teams approached simultaneously. Bakugo launched another aerial assault from the right, while Todoroki's team advanced from the left, ice spreading rapidly across the ground. Other formations closed in from remaining directions, creating their most desperate situation yet. We need one final evasion, Izuku stated, assessing their options. Smokescreen would buy us time, but they'd still find us eventually in this enclosed arena. A bold strategy formed in his mind, risky but potentially decisive. New plan, he announced quickly. We're going up and staying up. What? Kendo questioned, but there was no time for explanation. Izuku activated float at significantly higher power than before, lifting their entire formation several meters off the ground. Simultaneously, he deployed Black Whip strategically, not visibly as energy tendrils, but wrapped around his teammates' waists beneath their uniforms, providing additional support and connection. Incredible! Team Midoriya is actually levitating above the battlefield. Present mix amazement mirrored that of the crowd, who exploded in cheers at the unexpected maneuver. Bakugo, already airborne, changed course to intercept them. "You're not getting away that easily, Deku." In response, Izuku produced a controlled burst of smokescreen, obscuring their formation just as Bakugo approached. The explosive teen's hands met only smoke as he passed through the cloud, finding nothing solid to grab. 30 seconds remaining. Todoroki, recognizing the time constraint, made a desperate move. "Yaoyorozu cannon. Kaminari, prepare for discharge." The creation hero produced a small pneumatic cannon that launched Kaminari toward Team Midoriya's suspended formation. The electric user prepared to release a controlled, indiscriminate discharge to paralyze them upon contact. Seeing the approaching threat, Izuku made a critical decision. "Release float on my mark." Now, their formation dropped suddenly, causing Kaminari to sail harmlessly overhead. As they descended, Izuku reactivated float just enough to cushion their landing, while Kendo's enlarged hands stabilized their formation against the impact. 10 seconds. In that final moment, Bakugo made one last desperate lunge, propelled by his most powerful explosion yet. His trajectory was perfect, hand extended toward the 10 million point headband with unerring precision. Izuku, anticipating this final assault, activated full cowling at 50%. The adaptation will manifested prominently behind him as he channeled a precisely calibrated smash into the ground beneath their formation. The resulting shockwave created a crater and sent debris flying outward in all directions, disrupting Bakugo's approach midair and forcing all nearby teams to retreat for safety. "Time's up," Midnight announced as the buzzer sounded. "The cavalry battle is complete." When the dust settled, Team Midoriya stood intact, the 10 million point headband still secured firmly around Izuku's forehead. They had successfully defended their position through the entire event, surviving as the primary target against all odds. And the final results are in. Present Mike declared. Advancing to the tournament round, Team Midoriya, Team Todoroki, Team Bakugo, and Team Shinso. Exhausted but elated, Izuku's team dissolved their formation, each member catching their breath after the intense competition. "That was incredible teamwork," Izuku praised genuinely. "I couldn't have done it without all of you." "Your strategies were sound," Tokoyami acknowledged with a respectful nod. "And your adaptability under pressure is remarkable. Those new abilities of yours are certainly interesting," Kendo added with a meaningful look. "We should talk about those sometime." Before Izuku could respond, Uraraka suddenly doubled over, finally succumbing to the nausea caused by overuse of her quirk. "Worth it," she managed between dry heaves, giving a weak thumbs up. As medical robots arrived to assist Uraraka and other students with minor injuries, Midnight retook center stage. "Congratulations to our advancing teams. We'll take a 1-hour lunch break before the final event, a 16-person tournament. Matchups will be determined by drawing lots after the break, so rest up and prepare yourselves." Izuku glanced toward Todoroki, who met his gaze with renewed intensity. The dual quirk user had clearly been holding back during the cavalry battle, using only his ice despite several situations where his fire would have been advantageous. Their earlier conversation echoed in Izuku's mind. A quirk marriage, created to surpass all might. I refused to use his power. Todoroki's internal conflict was limiting his potential, creating an artificial ceiling on his capabilities. "If we face each other in the tournament," Izuku thought determinedly, "I'll show you what it really means to use your power to its fullest, not for spite or revenge, but because that's what true heroes do." The tournament bracket was displayed on massive screens throughout the stadium, generating excited discussion among spectators and participants alike. 16 students had advanced to the final round, and the matchups promised several intriguing confrontations. Izuku scanned the pairings with interest. Match 1. Izuku Midoriya vs Hitoshi Shinso. Match 2. Shoto Todoroki vs Hantashiro. Match 3. Katsuki Bakugo vs Achiko Uraraka. Match 4. Tenya Ida vs Mei Hatsum. Match 5. Momo Yaoyorozu vs Fumikage Tokoyami. Match 6. Eijiro Kirishima vs Tetsu. Match 7. Itsuka Kendo vs Ibara Shiozaki. Match 8. Denki Kaminari vs Mina Ishido. His first opponent would be Hitoshi Shinso from General Studies, someone he knew virtually nothing about, having never interacted with him during their time at UA. This knowledge gap was concerning, especially since Shinso had somehow managed to lead his team to qualification despite lacking the combat-oriented training of the Hero Corps students. As Izuku contemplated his approach to the upcoming match, he was approached by Ojiro, whose expression was unusually serious. "Midoriya, I need to warn you about your opponent," the tail-equipped student said quietly. "Shinso has a mind control quirk. If you respond to anything he says, you'll fall under his control." Izuku's eyes widened at this crucial information. Mind control? That explains how his team qualified despite the physical disadvantage. Thank you for telling me, Ojiro-kun. Be careful, Ojiro advised grimly. Once he has you, you have no control over your actions. I don't remember anything from the entire cavalry battle because of his quirk. Armed with this critical knowledge, Izuka headed to the preparation room to mentally focus before his match. The adaptation will briefly manifested as he contemplated strategies against Shinso's mind control, his quirk working to process even this non-physical threat. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final event. Present Mick's energetic voice announced throughout the stadium. One-on-one battles to determine the strongest first year at UA. First up, from the Hero Course, Class 1A, the frontrunner who's dominated every event so far, Izuka Midoriya. Taking a deep breath, Izuka stepped onto the concrete stage in the center of the stadium, the roar of the crowd washing over him like a physical force. This was his moment to show the world what he was capable of, to take another step toward becoming the hero he aspired to be. Versus, from General Studies, the dark horse who made it to the finals through cunning and strategy, Hitoshi Shinso. Across the stage, a tall student with tired eyes and distinctive purple hair approached, his expression calculating and slightly bitter. He stopped at his designated position, studying Izuku with undisguised resentment. "So you're the golden boy of Class 1A," Shinso commented, his voice deceptively casual. "Must be nice having a flashy quirk that lets you coast through life." Izuku remained silent, remembering Ojiro's warning. Don't respond to anything he says. Even a simple acknowledgement could trigger the mind control. Shinso's eyes narrowed at Izuku's silence. "What's wrong? Think you're too good to talk to someone from General Studies?" He adopted a more provocative tone. "I bet you've never had to work for anything in your life, not with a power like yours." The irony of this accusation wasn't lost on Izuku, who had spent most of his life quirkless, training relentlessly to earn All Might's acknowledgement. The temptation to correct Shinso's misconception was strong, but he maintained his disciplined silence. "The rules are simple," Present Mike announced. "Win by knocking your opponent out of bounds, immobilizing them, or making them surrender. Inflicting serious injury will result in disqualification. Ready? Begin." The moment midnight signaled the start, Izuku activated full cowling at 30%. Green energy crackling around his form as he prepared to end the match quickly with superior speed and strength. Seeing this display of power, Shinso's expression darkened further. "So that's how it is. People like you are born with everything, while people like me have to scratch and claw for recognition." Izuku launched forward, prepared to push Shinso out of bounds with minimal force. A clean, efficient victory without unnecessary combat. "I wonder what your mother would think," Shinso called out suddenly, his voice cutting through the stadium noise with precision, seeing her son refuse to even acknowledge someone trying to better themselves. Is she proud of raising such an arrogant hero? The mention of his mother caught Izuku completely off guard. Without thinking, he responded instinctively, "Don't bring my mother into this." The moment the words left his mouth, Izuku felt a strange fog envelop his consciousness. His body stopped responding to his commands, frozen mid-stride as his mind became disconnected from his physical form. Through increasingly distant awareness, he heard Shinso's voice. "That's it. Turn around and walk out of bounds." To his horror, Izuku felt his body complying, turning mechanically toward the edge of the stage. His consciousness screamed in protest, but his limbs moved of their own accord, steadily approaching the boundary line. In the depths of his mind, panic gave way to desperate focus. "If I can't control my body, maybe I can trigger my quirk internally," he thought, concentrating on the sensation of one for all flowing through him. As he neared the boundary, something extraordinary happened. The adaptation wheel manifested behind him, spinning rapidly as it processed this unusual threat. His muscles suddenly tensed and bulged unnaturally, his body temporarily transforming as his adaptation quirk directly counteracted Shinso's mental control. The spectators gasped at the grotesque display, Izuku's form shifting and contorting as the wheel worked to develop countermeasures against the mind control. For a brief moment, the fingers of his left hand snapped backward with enough force to generate a small shockwave, the pain creating a jolt to his system. "What the?" Shinso's concentration wavered at the unexpected sight. The momentary disruption was enough. Izuku's consciousness surged back into control of his body, the adaptation wheel completing its process as his form returned to normal. He found himself just centimeters from the boundary line, toes nearly crossing the threshold to disqualification. "What an incredible recovery," Present Mike exclaimed. Just when it seemed Midoriya was finished, his quirk adapted to Shinso's mind control. Shinso stared in disbelief. "That's impossible," he muttered. No one breaks my brainwashing through sheer willpower. Now fully aware of Shinso's capabilities and free from his control, Izuku activated full cowling again, moving with enhanced speed toward his opponent. Shinso attempted to backpedal, but the difference in their physical capabilities was too great. With precise control, Izuku grasped Shinso's uniform and lifted him off the ground, carrying him swiftly to the boundary line before setting him down outside the designated area. Shinso is out of bounds, Midnight announced. Midoriya advances to the second round. Rather than celebrating immediately, Izuku turned to his defeated opponent. Though he maintained his silence to avoid triggering the mind control again, he extended his hand in a gesture of respect. Shinso hesitated before reluctantly accepting the handshake. Must be nice having a quirk that can overcome anything, he said bitterly. Some of us aren't so fortunate. Izuku finally spoke, careful to phrase his words as statements rather than responses. Your quirk would be incredible for hero work. Hostage situations, riot control, defusing conflicts without violence. There are countless scenarios where mind control would save lives more effectively than combat abilities. Surprise flickered across Shinso's tired features. Easy for you to say when you have both power and versatility. Nothing worth having comes easily, Izuku replied, thinking of his own journey. The entrance exam is designed to favor combat quirks, but that doesn't determine who can become a great hero. Keep pushing forward. There are other paths to the hero course. As they parted ways, the crowd's cheers intensified, impressed by both the competition and the sportsmanship displayed. From the stands, All Might watched with pride as his successor not only overcame a uniquely challenging opponent but also offered genuine encouragement rather than dismissal. In the waiting room, Izuku was met by Kendo, whose expression combined concern with curiosity. What happened out there? Your body looked like it was changing. My adaptation quirk found a way to counter his mind control, Izuku explained, which was true if incomplete. It's the first time it's adapted to a mental attack rather than a physical one. Kendo studied him thoughtfully. Your quirk keeps revealing new dimensions. First super strength, then black energy tendrils, floating, smoke generation, and now resistance to mental manipulation. That's not typical for even the most versatile adaptation quirks. Before Izuku could formulate a response, they were interrupted by the announcement of the second match, Todoroki vs. Zero. They moved to the viewing section to watch, the conversation temporarily suspended but the questions in Kendo's eyes remaining unresolved. The subsequent matches progressed with varying degrees of intensity and drama. Todoroki instantly immobilized Zero with a glacier of unprecedented scale. Bakugo defeated Uraraka despite her ingenious strategy with accumulated debris. Ida forfeited to Hatsum after unwittingly serving as advertisement for her support items. Tokoyami overwhelmed Yaoyorozu before she could fully utilize her creation quirk. Kirishima and Tetsu fought to a draw that required an arm wrestling tiebreaker. Kendo strategically defeated Shiozaki by countering her vines with precise strikes. Kaminari shocked himself into idiocy against Ishido's acid attacks. Throughout these contests, Izuku observed carefully, analyzing fighting styles and quirk applications while mentally preparing for his next match. The tournament bracket had been updated to reflect the advancing competitors. Quarterfinals, Match 1. Izuku Midoriya vs. Shoto Todoroki Match 2, Katsuki Bakugo vs. Mei Hatsum Match 3, Fumikage Tokoyami vs. Eijiro Kirishima Match 4, Itsuka Kendo vs. Mina Ishido. His upcoming confrontation with Todoroki would be the true test, not just of physical abilities, but of the ideological difference they had discussed before the festival began. This wasn't merely about advancing in the tournament, it was about helping a fellow hero in training recognize his full potential. The quarterfinals begin with what might be the most anticipated match of the tournament. Present Mic announced as Izuku and Todoroki took their positions on the stage. Two of Class 1's top students, both undefeated so far, who will advance to the semifinals. Across the concrete platform, Todoroki's heterochromatic eyes locked onto Izuku with frigid determination. Frost already crept along the ground from his right foot, temperature dropping noticeably across the arena. Midoriya, he stated calmly, I will defeat you using only half my power. I don't need his fire to win. Izuku settled into a ready stance, full cowling activating at 40% as green energy cascaded around his form. The adaptation will briefly manifested behind him, already processing strategies against Todoroki's ice abilities. I won't hold back, Todoroki-kun, Izuku replied firmly. And if you do, you will lose. Begin. Midnight announced, cracking her whip to signal the start of the match. Todoroki immediately unleashed a massive wave of ice, larger and faster than anything he'd demonstrated previously. The glacier surged toward Izuku with frightening speed, threatening to engulf him completely. Rather than dodging, Izuku channeled one for all into his right arm, drawing back his fist. Smash! he shouted, delivering a devastating punch that shattered the approaching ice into countless glittering fragments. The force of the impact created a shockwave that pushed Todoroki backwards several steps, frost forming on his right side as his body temperature dropped from excessive quirk usage. Using your ice at full power already puts strain on your body, Izuku observed, advancing forward. Without your fire to regulate your temperature, you'll eventually slow down. Todoroki's expression darkened. I don't need your analysis, he growled, sending another wave of ice. This one aimed at encircling rather than directly hitting Izuku. Activating float, Izuku launched himself skyward, evading the encirclement attempt. From his elevated position, he deployed Black Whip, the dark energy tendrils shooting toward Todoroki to restrict his movement. With impressive reflexes, Todoroki created an ice barrier that intercepted the tendrils, freezing them momentarily before Izuku retracted them. The exchange continued with increasing intensity, Todoroki creating increasingly elaborate ice structures while Izuku countered with combinations of strength, mobility, and tactical applications of his various abilities. As the battle progressed, the pattern became clear, Todoroki's attacks growing slower as frost accumulated on his right side, while Izuku maintained consistent power through his adaptations. The temperature around Todoroki dropped dangerously low, his breath visible in the increasingly frigid air surrounding him. "You're at your limit," Izuku stated, standing amid the shattered remains of Todoroki's latest ice assault. "Without using your left side, you can't maintain this level of output." "Shut up," Todoroki snarled, uncharacteristic emotion breaking through his usually stoic demeanor. "I will reject his power completely." "It's not his power," Izuku countered, green energy intensifying around him as he channeled 50% of One for All. "It's yours. And by rejecting half of your capabilities, you're disrespecting everyone who's giving their absolute best here today." To emphasize his point, Izuku launched forward with explosive speed, delivering a controlled but powerful kick that sent Todoroki skidding backward toward the boundary. Only a hastily erected ice wall prevented his immediate elimination. "Is your resistance to your father worth losing? Worth failing to become the hero you could be?" Izuku pressed, his voice rising with passion. "If you're holding back because of some personal vendetta, you've already let him win." Todoroki's eyes widened at these words, something vulnerable flashing across his features. Memories seemed to play behind his mismatched eyes, painful recollections that Izuku could only imagine. "You don't understand," Todoroki said, his voice uncharacteristically small. "The memories associated with this power. My mother's tears as she poured boiling water on my face." Understanding dawned on Izuku. The burn scar wasn't from training with Endeavor as many assumed, but something far more traumatic. Despite this revelation, he couldn't back down from the fundamental truth. "Your power is yours alone," Izuku insisted, preparing for another advance. "Not your father's, not your mother's. What you do with it is what defines you as a hero." To demonstrate his conviction, Izuku channeled One for All to 65%. Higher than he'd previously attempted in public competition. The adaptation will manifested prominently behind him, processing the increased output as green lightning crackled more intensely around his form. "This is what it means to give everything," Izuku shouted, launching forward with unprecedented speed. Detroit Smash. The impact when his fist met Todoroki's hastily formed ice shield created a shockwave that reverberated throughout the stadium. The ice shattered completely and Todoroki was thrown backward, tumbling across the concrete stage. As Todoroki struggled to his feet, heavily frosted and visibly exhausted, Izuku prepared for a final exchange. "Show me your true power, Todoroki." "All of it." Something shifted in Todoroki's expression. A lifetime of resentment battling against the simple truth of Izuku's words. As he raised his head, determination replaced resignation in his heterochromatic eyes. "My power," he whispered, looking down at his left hand. Flames suddenly erupted from his left side, melting the accumulated frost and bathing the arena in orange light. The temperature swung dramatically from frigid cold to scorching heat as Todoroki fully activated both halves of his quirk for the first time in public. "Thank you, Midoriya," he said, a genuine smile, perhaps his first since entering UA, spreading across his face. "Incredible," Present Mike exclaimed. "Todoroki is using his fire. This match has reached a new level." With his temperature regulated and power fully unleashed, Todoroki created a massive attack combining ice and fire, a swirling vortex of elemental fury directed at Izuku. Recognizing the magnitude of the approaching threat, Izuku activated One for All at 75%, the highest sustained output he'd ever attempted. The adaptation wheel expanded to its largest size yet, processing the extraordinary strain as he prepared to meet Todoroki's combined attack head-on. Smash! Izuku roared, driving his fist forward with catastrophic force. The collision of powers generated an explosion of unprecedented scale, blinding light and deafening sound engulfing the arena. The concrete stage cracked and buckled under the pressure, debris flying in all directions as the shockwave rippled outward. Cementos and Midnight intervened simultaneously, the cement hero creating barriers to contain the blast while the R-rated hero prepared to declare the match concluded for safety reasons. When the dust settled, the outcome was immediately apparent. Todoroki lay outside the boundary, thrown from the stage by the force of the explosion despite his impressive combined attack. Izuku remained standing, though barely, at the edge of the severely damaged platform. Todoroki is out of bounds, Midnight announced, somewhat shakily after the intense display. Midoriya advances to the semi-finals. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause, having witnessed a battle that exceeded all expectations. As medical robots approached to check both contestants for injuries, Izuku crossed the shattered arena to where Todoroki was rising to his feet. "That was your true power," Izuku said, extending his hand. "Imagine what you can accomplish when you stop fighting against yourself." Todoroki accepted the handshake, his expression thoughtful. "You were willing to injure yourself to help me overcome my limitation," he observed. "Why? Because that's what heroes do," Izuku replied simply. "They help others become their best selves." As they exited the arena together, Izuku sensed he had gained not just a victory, but a genuine ally. More importantly, he had helped someone break free from the chains of their past, allowing them to move forward toward their heroic potential. In the shadows of the stadium tunnel, All Might waited in his deflated form, a proud smile on his gaunt face. "Young Midoriya," he said quietly once Todoroki had proceeded to the medical area. "You embody the true spirit of One for All, the power to inspire and elevate others even as you grow stronger yourself." Izuku smiled, though exhaustion was evident in his features. "I just told him what I needed to hear when I was doubting my own path," he admitted. "That our powers are what we make of them, not what others define them to be." All Might nodded sagely. "A lesson even I sometimes forget." He glanced toward the monitor showing the tournament bracket. "Rest while you can. I suspect your next opponent will be young Bakugo, and he won't be nearly as receptive to your philosophy." Izuku's prediction proved accurate. Bakugo defeated Hatsum with explosive efficiency, Tokoyami overcame Kirishima's hardening with Dark Shadow's versatility, and Kendo's tactical approach secured victory against Ishito's unpredictable style. The semi-final matches were set. Izuku Midoriya versus Katsuki Bakugo, Fumikage Tokoyami versus Itsuka Kendo. The confrontation Izuku had simultaneously anticipated and dreaded since entering UA was finally at hand. A public showdown with his childhood tormentor and rival, on the nation's biggest stage. Unlike Todoroki, whose limitation was self-imposed, Bakugo's issue was his excessive pride and rage, qualities not easily addressed through mere conversation. As Izuku prepared for what promised to be the most emotionally charged battle of the tournament, he felt the presence of the vestiges stirring in his consciousness, offering not advice, but silent support for the challenge ahead. In the depths of his being, the adaptation wheel continued its work, processing not just physical capabilities but emotional resilience as well. This confrontation with Bakugo would test more than his quirk, it would test his resolve, his conviction, and his understanding of what truly made a hero worthy of the title. And deep within One for All, beyond even the awakened vestiges, something shifted, responding to Izuku's growing mastery and the resonance of his adaptation quirk with the core of this inherited power. Another test approached, one that would push the boundaries of adaptation itself. The semi-final match between Itsuka Kendo and Fumikage Tokoyami was a magnificent display of skill and strategy. Kendo's Big Fist quirk provided both offensive power and defensive capabilities as she repeatedly attempted to close the distance against Tokoyami's Dark Shadow. "Your technique is impressive," Tokoyami acknowledged as he directed Dark Shadow to intercept another of Kendo's powerful strikes. "But Dark Shadow thrives in the shadows of this arena." Kendo's orange hair whipped around her determined face as she analyzed the battlefield. "Then I'll just have to bring some light to the situation." She feinted left before executing a perfect leap over Dark Shadow's guard, her enlarged hands catching the sunlight and reflecting it directly onto the sentient shadow creature. Dark Shadow recoiled momentarily, giving Kendo an opening to land a solid hit on Tokoyami. Despite her ingenuity, Tokoyami's mastery of Dark Shadow ultimately proved superior. When Kendo attempted a similar strategy again, Dark Shadow was prepared, grabbing her enlarged hands and using her own momentum to throw her from the ring. "Kendo is out of bounds," Midnight announced. Tokoyami advances to the finals. The raven-headed boy bowed respectfully to his opponent as she picked herself up. "A worthy battle," he said solemnly. Next time, I won't make it so easy, Kendo replied with a good-natured smile, though disappointment flickered in her eyes. The second semi-final match saw Bakugo facing Tokoyami, a confrontation that highlighted the explosive teen's tactical understanding despite his rage-fueled persona. Recognizing Dark Shadow's weakness to light, Bakugo unleashed a barrage of his brightest explosions, systematically weakening Tokoyami's quirk until victory was inevitable. And with that explosive finish, we have our finalists. Present mixed voice boomed throughout the stadium. The final match of the UA Sports Festival will be Katsuki Bakugo versus Izuku Midoriya. The stadium erupted in anticipation. After witnessing both students' performances throughout the festival, spectators and pro heroes alike were eager to see this culminating battle between two of Class 1A's most powerful competitors. In the preparation room, Izuku sat quietly, mentally reviewing strategies for the confrontation ahead. This wasn't just another match, it was the culmination of years of complex history between himself and Bakugo. "You ready?" Kendo asked, leaning against the doorframe. Izuku looked up with a slight smile. "As ready as I'll ever be. He's going to come at you with everything he has," she warned. "Bakugo's been watching your matches closely. He knows your abilities are growing with each fight." "I know," Izuku nodded, standing resolutely. "That's why I can't hold back either. Not anymore." As he walked toward the tunnel leading to the arena, All Might appeared in his deflated form, offering a supportive thumbs up. "Remember your training, young Midoriya. And remember why you fight." The roar of the crowd intensified as Izuku stepped onto what remained of the concrete stage, repaired by Cementos after the devastation of his match with Todoroki. Across from him, Bakugo emerged from the opposite tunnel, his crimson eyes burning with determination and barely contained rage. "Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for," Present Mike announced with characteristic enthusiasm. "The final match to determine the champion of this year's sports festival." Midnight stepped forward, raising her whip. "Contestants ready? The same rules apply: win by knockout, immobilization, or ring out. Begin." "I've been waiting for this, Deku," Bakugo snarled, his palms already sparking with nitroglycerin sweat. "All these fancy new powers, and you still won't be able to beat me." Izuku didn't respond verbally, instead activating full cowling at 50%. Green lightning crackling around his form with unprecedented intensity. The adaptation will briefly manifested behind him, processing combat data from their previous encounters. "Still looking down on me?" Bakugo roared, launching himself forward with an explosion. "Die!" His right hand swung toward Izuku's face with devastating speed, a massive explosion blooming from his palm. But Izuku was ready, moving with fluid precision to sidestep the blast while simultaneously delivering a controlled counter to Bakugo's exposed ribs. The explosive teen skidded backward from the impact but recovered quickly, a savage grin spreading across his face. "So you've gotten faster. Good. IT wouldn't be satisfying otherwise." Bakugo unleashed a barrage of explosions, varying their intensity and angle unpredictably. Izuku weaved through the assault, his movements becoming increasingly precise as the adaptation will process each blast's specific properties. "Incredible mobility from both contestants," Present Mike narrated excitedly. "Bakugo's explosive arsenal versus Midoriya's adaptive capabilities. This is truly a clash of titans." The pattern quickly became apparent to the more observant spectators. Each time Bakugo used a particular explosive technique, it was initially effective, forcing Izuku to defend or evade. But upon subsequent attempts with the same attack, Izuku's body automatically adapted, reducing or negating its impact entirely. "Why won't you stay down?" Bakugo demanded, frustration mounting as he fired another concentrated blast that Izuku simply deflected with his forearm, the adaptation wheel briefly flashing behind him. "Because I can't afford to," Izuku replied calmly, his voice carrying unexpected weight. "Not if I want to become the kind of hero who saves everyone with a smile." This response only inflamed Bakugo further. "Always with the hero worship. I'll show you what real victory looks like." He launched himself skyward with a massive explosion, then began spinning rapidly, gathering momentum for his most devastating attack. Howitzer. Impact. The aerial bombardment technique Bakugo had been developing descended toward Izuku like a meteor, promising destruction beyond anything he'd demonstrated previously. The heat alone was enough to create visible distortions in the air, the concrete stage already beginning to crack beneath the pressure. In that crucial moment, Izuku made a decision. He would not hold back, not out of spite or vengeance, but because Bakugo deserved his absolute best. Full cowling. 100%. Izuku declared, the adaptation wheel expanding dramatically behind him as One for All's full power coursed through his body. Unlike previous instances where this level of power had damaged him, his adaptations had progressed to the point where he could maintain control for brief, critical moments. Drawing back his fist as Bakugo's howitzer impact approached, Izuku channeled the combined force of One for All and his adaptation quirk. United States of World Smash. The collision of these ultimate techniques created a cataclysmic explosion that engulfed the entire arena. Concrete shattered, air displaced with hurricane force, and blinding light forced spectators to shield their eyes. The protective barriers deployed by UA's security systems activated automatically, preventing debris from reaching the stands. When visibility returned, the outcome was undeniable. The fighting stage had been reduced to rubble, with only the boundary markers somehow remaining intact. At the center of the devastation stood Izuku, the adaptation wheel spinning serenely behind him, seemingly healing and stabilizing his body after the tremendous exertion. Several meters away, Bakugo lay unconscious, his body having absorbed the residual force of their clashing attacks despite Izuku's precise control. Keikatsuki Bakugo is unable to continue, Midnight announced after confirming his condition. Izuku Midoriya is the champion of the UA Sports Festival. The stadium exploded in cheers and applause, spectators and pro heroes alike stunned by the display of raw power and technical skill they had witnessed. Recovery Girl immediately rushed to attend to Bakugo, whose injuries were significant but not life-threatening thanks to Izuku's calculated restraint even in that final exchange. As medical robots approached with a stretcher, Izuku walked over to his fallen rival, genuine concern evident in his expression. "I'm sorry it had to end this way," he said quietly, though Bakugo remained unconscious. "But thank you for always pushing me to be stronger." The award ceremony followed shortly after, with Midnight presenting medals to the top performers. Tokoyami received bronze with characteristic solemnity. Bakugo, now conscious but seething, had to be restrained to accept silver, and Izuku received the gold medal from All Might himself, the symbol of peace beaming with pride at his successor. "Young Midoriya," All Might said in his booming voice as he placed the medal around Izuku's neck, "you have shown not just extraordinary power, but the heart of a true hero. Your journey is just beginning." As the ceremony concluded and the crowds began to disperse, Izuku found himself surrounded by his classmates, all eager to congratulate him and discuss the remarkable tournament. "That was incredible," Kaminari exclaimed, miming explosions with his hands. "The way you just stood there after that massive collision. The adaptation wheel that appeared behind you, is that part of your quirk manifestation?" Yaoyorozu inquired with scholarly interest. Before Izuku could respond to the barrage of questions, a heavy silence fell as Bakugo approached, his expression unreadable beneath his spiky blonde hair. Izuku began, unsure what to say after such a decisive victory over his childhood tormentor. "Save it," Bakugo interrupted, his voice surprisingly quiet. "This changes nothing. I'll surpass you eventually, Deku. Remember that." Without waiting for a response, he turned and walked away, hands jammed into his pockets. Kendo appeared at Izuku's side, watching Bakugo's retreating form. "That's probably the closest thing to acknowledgement you'll get from him," she observed. "For now," Izuku agreed with a small smile. "But it's a start." As the sports festival concluded, Izuku couldn't help but feel that something fundamental had shifted. Not just in his relationship with Bakugo, but in his understanding of his own evolving powers. The adaptation wheel was becoming more visible with each significant challenge, its presence no longer just a fleeting manifestation but an integral part of his heroic identity. Looking toward the horizon as the setting sun bathed UA in golden light, Izuku knew that greater challenges awaited, and with them, new adaptations and greater responsibilities. The following day, Class 1A gathered for a special homeroom session with Midnight. The R-rated hero strutted to the front of the classroom, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. "After your performances in the sports festival, it's time for the next step in your hero journeys," she announced dramatically. "Today, you'll choose your hero names, the identities that will define your careers." Excited murmurs rippled through the classroom as Midnight distributed blank placards for students to write their chosen aliases. "These aren't necessarily permanent," she clarified, "but they will be the names you use during your upcoming internships, so choose wisely." One by one, students presented their hero names, receiving varying degrees of approval from their classmates and Midnight. Uraraka became Uravity, Tokoyami chose Tsukuyami, and Kirishima proudly declared himself Red Riot in homage to his idol Crimson Riot. When Bakugo proposed Lord Explosion Murder only to be immediately rejected, Izuku couldn't help but smile at the explosive teen's predictable choice. Their rivalry remained intact despite yesterday's outcome. Finally, it was Izuku's turn. He approached the podium with quiet confidence, holding up his placard for the class to see. "Divine General," he stated clearly. The classroom fell silent for a moment, considering the unique choice. Divine General? Midnight repeated thoughtfully. It's distinctive, powerful, and has a mythological quality that complements your mysterious adaptation quirk. I approve. Kendo gave him a thumbs up from her seat. It suits you, especially with that wheel that appears behind you during intense battles. Izuku returned to his desk, satisfied with his choice. The name had come to him during meditation after the sports festival, inspired partly by the wheel that increasingly manifested during his adaptations and partly by the responsibility he felt as All Might's successor, a general in the ongoing battle against evil, guided by the divine legacy of One for All. Now that you've established your hero identities, Aizawa announced, taking over from Midnight, it's time to discuss your internships. Based on your performances in the sports festival, various pro heroes have extended offers to work with you. He activated the classroom's digital display, revealing a chart showing the number of offers each student had received. Unsurprisingly, Todoroki and Bakugo had received numerous invitations despite not winning the tournament. But it was Izuku's name at the top of the list that drew gasps from the class. He had received over 4,000 offers, an unprecedented number for a first-year student. Midoriya, Aizawa continued, his expression as impassive as ever. Despite the extraordinary circumstances, you've attracted attention from virtually every major hero agency in Japan. Your performance in the finals was noteworthy. This was an understatement. Videos of Izuku's adaptation wheel and his final clash with Bakugo had gone viral overnight, with speculation about his unusual quirk dominating hero forums and news programs. As Izuku reviewed his extensive list of offers, a hand clapped him on the shoulder. It was All Might in his true form, having slipped into the classroom quietly. Young Midoriya, a word, he requested, gesturing toward the hallway. Once they were alone, All Might's perpetual smile dimmed slightly. I had hoped to recommend an internship with my old teacher, Grand Torino, he explained, his voice lowering conspiratorially. He was Nana Shimura's partner and the only person besides you who knows about One for All. His guidance would be invaluable for your development. All Might's body visibly trembled at the mention of his former mentor. He's intense, but he could help you master float and your other inherited abilities. Grand Torino? Izuku repeated thoughtfully. If he worked with your predecessor and knows about One for All, he'd definitely understand my situation better than most pros. All Might nodded vigorously. Precisely. Though I should warn you, his voice dropped even further. He's the only person who ever made me experience true fear during training. This admission from the symbol of peace was startling, but it only reinforced Izuku's decision. If he can help me understand this power better, especially integrating the quirks of the previous users with my adaptation ability, then that's where I need to be. Excellent. All Might exclaimed, returning to his usual enthusiastic demeanor. I'll make the arrangements. Prepare yourself, young Midoriya. This won't be like any training you've experienced before. When Izuku returned to the classroom, his classmates were eagerly discussing their internship options. I'm going with Gang Orca, Kendo announced proudly. His combat style complements my big fist quirk, and he's known for thorough tactical training. Endeavor requested me specifically, Todoroki stated, his expression complicated. After his match with Izuku, his relationship with his father's legacy had begun to shift, though lingering resentment remained evident. As the week progressed and preparations for internships were finalized, Izuku found himself increasingly curious about Grand Torino. All Might had provided minimal details beyond vague warnings and nervous stammering whenever the elderly hero was mentioned. The night before departures, Izuku sat cross-legged on his bed, engaging in what had become a daily ritual, communing with the vestiges of One for All in his mindscape. Within this metaphysical realm, Nana Shimura, Daigoro Banjo, and Enozaki had been joined by a fourth figure, a thin man with angular features who had introduced himself as Hikage Shinomori, the third bearer of One for All. Grand Torino was Nana's sidekick? Izuku inquired, directing his question to the female vestige. Nana's spectral form nodded, her perpetual smile reminiscent of All Might's. More than that, he was her confidant and closest ally. Despite his diminutive stature, his mastery of the jet quirk makes him one of the fastest heroes ever to grace the profession. He's also a tactical genius, Daigoro added, his muscular arms crossed. Don't let his age fool you. His mind is as sharp as ever. He'll push you beyond your limits, Hikage warned, his voice quiet but intense. But that's exactly what your adaptation quirk needs, extreme situations that force evolutionary responses. En nodded in agreement. The synergy between One for All and your adaptation ability is still developing. Grand Torino will know how to accelerate that process even if his methods seem unconventional. As Izuku emerged from his meditative state, the adaptation wheel briefly manifested behind him, processing the new information and preparing for the challenges ahead. With each passing day, the connection between his consciousness and this mysterious manifestation grew stronger, as though the wheel itself was becoming more aware of its role in his development. The following morning, Class 1A gathered at the train station, each student heading to different parts of Japan for their respective internships. Dressed in their school uniforms and carrying costume cases containing their hero outfits, they exchanged contact information and well wishes before boarding separate trains. "Be careful out there," Kendo told Izuku as they prepared to part ways. "Real hero work is different from training exercises." "You too," Izuku replied with a determined nod. "Let's both come back stronger." The train ride to Grand Torino's registered address was lengthy, giving Izuku ample time to review his notes on One for All's known abilities and the progress of his adaptations thus far. According to the vestiges, Grand Torino would help him better integrate the quirks he had already accessed, Black Whip, Float, and Smokescreen, while potentially awakening new ones. When he finally arrived at his destination, Izuku was surprised to find himself standing before a dilapidated building in a quiet residential area. Checking the address twice to confirm he hadn't made a mistake, he cautiously approached the entrance. "Hello?" he called, knocking on the door. "I'm Izuku Midoriya from Yae. I'm here for the internship with Grand Torino." Receiving no response, he tentatively pushed the door open, discovering it was unlocked. Inside, his blood ran cold at the sight that greeted him. An elderly man lying face down in a puddle of red liquid, seemingly unconscious or worse. "Oh no!" Izuku gasped, rushing to the prone figure. "Sir, are you all right?" Just as he reached for the man's shoulder, the supposedly injured hero suddenly sprang to his feet with surprising agility, performing a backflip that brought him face to face with the startled student. "Gotcha!" The diminutive elderly man cackled, revealing the blood to be nothing more than spilled ketchup from a nearby sausage plate. "Always check your surroundings before rushing in, rookie." Izuku stared in bewilderment at Grand Torino, significantly shorter than expected, with large round eyes in a wrinkled face, wearing a yellow and white hero costume that had seen better days. "You're Grand Torino," Izuku confirmed hesitantly, still recovering from the shock. "Who else would I be?" "Santa Claus," the elderly hero retorted, studying Izuku with surprising intensity despite his comical introduction. "So you're Toshinori's successor, eh? The boy with the adaptation quirk and the mysterious wheel." Izuku nodded, straightening his posture. "Yes, sir. I'm Izuku Midoriya, also known as the Hero Divine General." Grand Torino circled him critically. "Divine General, huh? Pretty presumptuous title for someone who can barely control his own power. Let's see what you've got. Change into your costume and meet me in the back area in 5 minutes. We're not wasting any time." As Izuku hurriedly changed into his hero costume, he could hear Grand Torino muttering about Toshinori's poor judgment and another unprepared wielder, which did little to boost his confidence. Nevertheless, he was determined to prove himself worthy of both One for All and the internship opportunity. The back area turned out to be a modest training space, essentially a reinforced room with basic equipment and enough open floor to allow for limited combat practice. Grand Torino was waiting, balancing atop a refrigerator with remarkable ease, despite his advanced age. "All right, show me what you can do," the elderly hero demanded. "Full cowling at maximum sustainable output. Now." Izuku activated One for All at 50%, green energy crackling around his form as he prepared for whatever test Grand Torino had in mind. The adaptation wheel briefly manifested behind him, now visible enough that Grand Torino narrowed his eyes at the sight. "Interesting," the elderly hero muttered before suddenly launching himself from the refrigerator with explosive speed. Izuku barely had time to register movement before a powerful kick connected with his midsection, sending him sprawling across the floor despite his enhanced durability. Before he could recover, Grand Torino was already ricocheting around the room, bouncing off walls, ceiling, and floor with his jet quirk at speeds that made him nearly impossible to track. "Too slow," Grand Torino taunted, delivering another blow to Izuku's shoulder. If this is the best Toshinori's successor can offer, then the future of One for All is grim indeed. Frustration mounting, Izuku attempted to predict Grand Torino's movements, focusing his enhanced senses to detect patterns in the elderly hero's attacks. Just as he thought he'd identified a rhythm, Grand Torino changed his approach, delivering a series of rapid strikes from unpredictable angles. "Stop trying to outthink me, boy," Grand Torino shouted as he continued his assault. "Your adaptation quirk doesn't work that way." It's not about intellectual understanding, it's about evolutionary response to stimulus. With that cryptic advice, the elderly hero increased his speed further, creating a veritable tornado of movement around Izuku. The attacks came faster and harder, each one targeting a different area of Izuku's body with scientific precision. The adaptation wheel began spinning more rapidly behind Izuku as his body processed the continuous assault. Green light pulsed from the wheel in increasingly complex patterns, matching the rhythm of Grand Torino's movements. Suddenly, something clicked. Izuku's perception of time seemed to slow as his body began naturally tracking Grand Torino's movements. With fluid precision that surprised even himself, he pivoted and caught the elderly hero's ankle mid-strike. There it is! Grand Torino cackled triumphantly, twisting free with remarkable flexibility. Your body is adapting to my speed, not through conscious effort, but through evolutionary necessity. For the remainder of the day, Grand Torino continued pushing Izuku's limits, forcing adaptation after adaptation through relentless combat drills. Each time Izuku's body adjusted to a particular challenge, the elderly hero would introduce a new variable, changing his attack patterns, incorporating environmental elements, or restricting Izuku's movements in unexpected ways. By evening, Izuku collapsed onto a chair, physically exhausted but mentally exhilarated. His costume showed signs of the day's intense training, but his body had already begun healing thanks to the continuous adaptations. Not completely hopeless, Grand Torino assessed grudgingly, tossing a bottle of water to his exhausted pupil. But still far from mastering the potential of your combined powers. Combined powers? Izuku questioned between gulps of water. Grand Torino settled into a chair opposite him, suddenly serious. Your situation is unique in the history of One for All. Previous wielders received the stockpiled power plus the quirks of their predecessors, but they integrated these abilities through conscious effort and training. He pointed to Izuku's chest. Your adaptation quirk changes the equation entirely. Instead of merely accessing these powers, your body evolves to optimize their usage based on necessity. That wheel manifestation is the physical representation of this process, a catalog of adaptations continuously updating itself. Izuku listened intently, finally receiving concrete information about the mysterious phenomenon that had been developing alongside his powers. The longer you hold One for All, Grand Torino continued, the more your adaptation quirk will integrate with its essence, potentially unlocking capabilities beyond anything previous wielders could achieve. But this comes with risks. What kind of risks? Izuku asked, apprehension growing. Grand Torino's expression darkened. Adaptation without purpose or direction can lead to evolutionary dead ends or, worse, transformations that sacrifice humanity for power. The wheel must remain a tool of heroism, not become an end unto itself. The cryptic warning lingered in Izuku's mind as he retired to the small bedroom Grand Torino had allocated for his stay. As he drifted towards sleep, the vestiges manifested in his consciousness, their spectral forms gathering around his mental projection. He speaks truth, Nana confirmed solemnly. Your adaptation quirk is reshaping One for All in ways we couldn't have predicted. The wheel is becoming more than just a manifestation, it's developing its own form of awareness. Is that dangerous? Izuku asked, concern evident in his mental voice. Not inherently, Daigoro replied thoughtfully. But power without purpose is always dangerous. Your conviction to become a hero who saves with a smile must remain your anchor, preventing the adaptations from becoming mere responses to threats rather than expressions of heroic intent. As the vestiges continued their counsel elsewhere in Hosu City, a different kind of adaptation was occurring, one born of hatred rather than heroism. The hero killer, Stain, pursued his bloody crusade against those he deemed false heroes, unaware that his path would soon intersect with that of UA's emerging divine general. The following day marked a significant escalation in Grand Torino's training regimen. Instead of confined practice in the small apartment, the elderly hero took Izuku to an abandoned factory complex on the outskirts of town, a sprawling maze of machinery, catwalks, and vast open spaces perfect for testing mobility and combat awareness. Today's focus, integrated adaptation, Grand Torino announced, his youthful energy belying his advanced age. Until now, you've been treating One for All and your other abilities as separate tools. That ends today. He tossed Izuku a small communications device. Put this in your ear. I'll be giving instructions while you navigate the facility. Your objective is to reach the central control room while I attempt to stop you using any means necessary. With that ominous declaration, Grand Torino activated his jet quirk and disappeared into the labyrinthine structure, leaving Izuku to formulate his approach. Begin, came the elderly hero's voice through the earpiece, accompanied by a distant crash that suggested he was already creating obstacles. Izuku activated full cowling at 45%, the green energy flowing smoothly around his form as he began traversing the facility. The adaptation wheel manifested briefly, analyzing the environment and processing potential routes. Lesson 1. Grand Torino's voice crackled through the communicator. Black Whip isn't just for grappling, it's an extension of your consciousness. On cue, a section of catwalk ahead suddenly collapsed, forcing Izuku to deploy Black Whip to swing across the gap. As he did so, Grand Torino appeared from above, descending with frightening speed for a direct attack. Don't just react, anticipate, the elderly hero instructed as he delivered a powerful kick that Izuku barely blocked. In that moment of contact, something shifted in Izuku's perception. Black Whip, still extended from his swing, suddenly branched into multiple tendrils without conscious direction, creating a defensive network around him that intercepted Grand Torino's follow-up strikes. There it is! Grand Torino exclaimed triumphantly, bouncing away before Izuku could counter. Your body is learning that Black Whip can function autonomously while you focus on other actions. The pattern continued throughout the facility, Grand Torino creating increasingly complex challenges that forced Izuku to integrate multiple aspects of One for All simultaneously. Flow combined with full cowling for three-dimensional maneuverability, Smokescreen deployed strategically to obscure Grand Torino's vision while Black Whip set traps in the mist. With each successful integration, the adaptation will appear more distinctly behind Izuku, its rotation becoming more complex as it processed and optimized these combined applications. You're still thinking too linearly. Grand Torino shouted after Izuku narrowly escaped another ambush. One for All isn't 7 separate quirks, it's a single power with multiple expressions. This insight triggered a profound realization in Izuku. Instead of consciously activating each ability in sequence, he surrendered to the flow of One for All's energy, allowing it to distribute naturally through his adapted pathways. The result was immediate and dramatic. The green lightning of full cowling began interpenetrating with Black Whip's dark tendrils, while Smokescreen manifested not as ordinary vapor but as mist infused with floating energy particles. The adaptation wheel expanded behind him, pulsing with light as these integrated expressions solidified into new patterns. Now you're getting it. Grand Torino's voice held genuine approval for the first time. This is just the beginning of what you're capable of. By the time Izuku finally reached the central control room, after nearly 4 hours of continuous adaptation challenges, his understanding of One for All had fundamentally transformed. The powers weren't tools to be used individually, but aspects of a unified whole that could flow together like instruments in an orchestra. Grand Torino was waiting, perched atop a defunct control panel with a satisfied expression. Not bad for a day's work, he acknowledged. Your body is adapting more efficiently now that you've stopped compartmentalizing the abilities. Izuku nodded, feeling the difference within himself. It's like they're becoming more harmonized, he attempted to explain. Less like separate functions and more like variations of the same energy. Precisely, Grand Torino confirmed. This is why I wanted to train you despite my retirement. Your unique combination of One for All and the adaptation quirk requires guidance from someone who understands the legacy you're carrying. He hopped down from his perch, suddenly serious. But today's lessons were just preparation for the real purpose of this internship. The real purpose? Izuku questioned. Grand Torino nodded gravely. Hosu City has been experiencing a series of attacks by the hero killer, Stain. As part of your internship, we'll be conducting night patrols in areas where he's likely to strike next. Izuku's eyes widened at this revelation. Stain? The vigilante who's been targeting pro-heroes, the very same Grand Torino confirmed. His twisted ideology about purging false heroes has already claimed multiple victims. Manual and Native are currently patrolling Hosu as well, along with several other pros responding to the crisis. A sense of purpose crystallized within Izuku. This wasn't just training anymore, it was real hero work with genuine stakes. When do we start? Tonight, Grand Torino answered, checking his watch. But first, we need to discuss patrol strategy and what to do if we actually encounter Stain. Remember, despite your progress, you're still an intern. Your primary responsibility is civilian safety and calling for backup if necessary. As they returned to Grand Torino's apartment to prepare for the evening patrol, news reports on the elderly hero's television provided disturbing updates about Stain's activities. The most recent victim, a pro-hero named Ingenium, had survived but suffered career-ending injuries. Ingenium? Izuku murmured, recognizing the name. That's Ida's older brother. Concern flooded through him as he realized the implications. Tenya Ida had chosen to intern in Hosu City despite having received offers from higher-ranked heroes elsewhere, a decision that suddenly made tragic sense. I need to contact Ida, Izuku stated urgently, reaching for his phone. If he's in Hosu because of his brother, he might do something reckless. Multiple attempts to reach Ida went unanswered, intensifying Izuku's concern. As evening approached and they prepared for patrol, the adaptation wheel manifested briefly behind him, seemingly responding to his emotional state as well as physical preparation. Focus on the task at hand, Grand Torino advised, noting Izuku's distraction. If your classmate isn't turning in Hosu, he's under the supervision of a professional hero. Our priority is civilian safety and gathering intelligence on Stain's movements. Donning their hero costumes, they departed for Hosu as darkness fell over the city. Grand Torino had identified several neighborhoods with narrow alleyways and limited visibility, environments that matched Stain's established hunting patterns. As they patrolled these areas, Izuku remained vigilant, his enhanced senses heightened further by recent adaptations. The quiet streets felt unnaturally tense, as though the entire city was holding its breath in anticipation of violence. "Stay close," Grand Torino instructed as they entered a particularly narrow backstreet. Stain targets isolated heroes, so will maintain line of sight at all times. Their patrol continued uneventfully for over an hour, covering several potential hotspots without incident. Just as they prepared to move to another district, a distant explosion shattered the night stillness, followed by columns of smoke rising from several blocks away. "That's not Stain's work," Grand Torino observed grimly. "Something else is happening." Before they could investigate, Izuku's phone vibrated with an incoming location, a direct GPS pin without accompanying text, sent from Ida's number. "It's from Ida," Izuku exclaimed, showing Grand Torino the screen. "No message, just coordinates. About 3 blocks from here." The elderly hero's expression darkened. "A trap potentially, or a genuine emergency. Either way, we proceed with caution. Lead the way, but stay alert." Following the GPS coordinates led them deeper into Hosu's labyrinth of back alleys, away from the commotion caused by the explosions. As they approached the designated location, Izuku's enhanced hearing detected sounds of conflict, metal striking metal, labored breathing, and a voice filled with cold fury. "Only those who meet my standards are allowed to do me in," the voice declared with fanatical conviction. "The rest are just scum who enhance the word hero." Rounding a final corner, they encountered a scene of horror. Tenya Ida lay paralyzed on the ground, bleeding from multiple wounds. Nearby, a professional hero, native based on his costume, was similarly immobilized. Standing over them, blade raised for a killing strike, was a gaunt figure wrapped in tattered bandages and armed with multiple bladed weapons, the hero killer, Stain. "Stop!" Izuku shouted, full cowling activating at 50% as he launched forward without hesitation. The hero killer turned with inhuman reflexes, his blade redirecting toward this new threat. "Another child playing hero?" he hissed, bloodshot eyes narrowing beneath his wrapped headgear. Stain's speed was remarkable, but Izuku's recent training with Grand Torino had prepared him for precisely this kind of encounter. Utilizing the integrated abilities he'd been developing, he combined Float's aerial maneuverability with full cowling's enhanced reflexes, easily evading the initial slash while simultaneously deploying Black Whip to secure both Ida and Native. "Grand Torino," Izuku called out, pulling the injured heroes away from immediate danger. "Get them to safety." The elderly hero moved with astonishing speed, appearing beside the injured pair. "I'll secure them and call for backup," he confirmed, assessing their conditions. "Can you hold him off?" Stain laughed coldly at this exchange. "Hold me off? The boy won't last 30 seconds. With blinding speed, he lunged toward Izuku, multiple blades converging from different angles. In that critical moment, the adaptation wheel manifested prominently behind Izuku, spinning rapidly as it analyzed Stain's fighting style. Izuku moved with precision that surprised even himself, weaving between the deadly blades while simultaneously countering with controlled strikes enhanced by One for All. "You have good instincts," Stain acknowledged, his expression shifting to one of grudging respect. "But instinct alone won't save you." The hero killer's tongue extended unnaturally, attempting to lick a blade that had collected a small amount of Izuku's blood from a grazing cut. Understanding instinctively that this was crucial to Stain's strategy, Izuku deployed Smokescreen with unprecedented control, creating a precise cloud that obscured just the hero killer's vision of his own weapon. "Clever," Stain growled, leaping backward to reassess. But futile. As Grand Torino evacuated Ida and Native to the alley entrance, Izuku maintained his defensive position, preventing Stain from pursuing. The adaptation wheel continued its analysis, processing Stain's movement patterns, blade trajectories, and the peculiar importance he placed on collecting blood. "Your quirk," Izuku deduced aloud. "It requires ingesting blood to paralyze your targets. That's why Ida and Native couldn't move." Stain's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing with newfound intensity. "Perceptive, but knowledge without power is meaningless." Let's see how well your analysis serves you in combat. What followed was a deadly dance of blades and adaptive movement. Stain attacked with the precision of someone who had studied hero combat techniques for years, specifically to counter them. But with each exchange, Izuku's body adapted further, anticipating feints, recognizing patterns, constantly evolving countermeasures to Stain's lethal style. Mid-area, Ida's voice called out weakly from the alley entrance, where Grand Torino was administering emergency first aid. This isn't your fight. He's mine to defeat. This isn't about personal vengeance, Ida. Izuku responded without taking his eyes off Stain. It's about protecting people, that's what heroes do. Stain paused momentarily, his bloodshot eyes evaluating Izuku with renewed interest. You're different from most I've encountered. There's authentic conviction in your actions. I don't need your approval, Izuku replied firmly, maintaining his guard. What you're doing is wrong regardless of your ideology. Is it? Stain challenged, gesturing toward Ida. That one came seeking vengeance, not justice. He embodies exactly what's wrong with modern hero society, personal glory and satisfaction prioritized over genuine service. Despite the villain's disturbing philosophy, Izuku recognized the manipulation attempt. Someone's motivations for becoming a hero can evolve over time. Ida made a mistake tonight, but condemning him permanently for a moment of weakness ignores the potential for growth. This response seemed to genuinely intrigue the hero killer. Interesting perspective. Perhaps you're worthy of being allowed to live after all. That's not your decision to make. Izuku declared, green energy intensifying around him as he channeled 60% of One for All's power, his highest sustainable output outside emergency situations. The adaptation wheel expanded dramatically behind him, its rotation becoming more complex as it integrated his growing understanding of Stain's combat style. Recognizing the shift in power, Stain prepared for a more serious confrontation. Show me, then prove your conviction with action. Their clash escalated to blinding speed, Stain's blades becoming nearly invisible as they cut through the air from multiple angles simultaneously. Izuku's responses were equally rapid, his body moving with fluid precision guided by continuous adaptation. What Stain couldn't know was that each near-miss and glancing blow provided Izuku's adaptation quirk with more data, continuously refining his defensive and offensive capabilities. The adaptation wheel's rotation increased with each exchange, processing information at an accelerated rate. Grand Torino observed the battle from the alley entrance, ready to intervene if necessary but recognizing that this confrontation had become an important test for Izuku's evolving powers. He's improving mid-battle, the elderly hero murmured to himself, noting how Izuku's movements became increasingly efficient with each exchange. The wheel is adapting to Stain's specific combat style in real time. The turning point came when Stain lunged with his primary blade, aiming for a disabling rather than lethal strike, a sign of growing respect. Instead of merely evading, Izuku caught the blade between his palms, the adaptation wheel flaring brilliantly behind him as his hands developed temporary resistance to the cutting edge. Impossible! Stain hissed, attempting to withdraw his weapon. In that moment of connection, Izuku delivered a perfectly calculated Delaware smash with his index finger, the controlled air pressure striking Stain's chest with enough force to send him crashing into the alley wall without causing lethal damage. Before the hero killer could recover, Izuku was upon him, Black Whip deploying to secure his arms and legs while Float negated any attempt to leverage body weight for escape. It's over, Stain, Izuku stated firmly, the adaptation wheel still visible behind him, its rotation slowing as the immediate threat subsided. Stain struggled briefly before relaxing into an eerie calm, his eyes never leaving Izuku's. Perhaps you're one of the few genuine articles after all, he acknowledged reluctantly. Like All Might, someone worthy of the title, hero. The sound of approaching footsteps and sirens indicated that reinforcements were finally arriving. Pro-heroes and police officers converged on the alley, securing Stain and providing additional medical attention to Ida and Native. As the hero killer was led away in specialized restraints, he fixed one final, intense gaze on Izuku. Remember this, boy. This society of false heroes will eventually collapse under its own corruption. When it does, only those with true conviction like yours will remain standing. Despite the disturbing prophecy, Izuku felt a sense of accomplishment washing over him. He had faced a notorious villain and prevailed not through overwhelming power, but through continuous adaptation and unwavering principle. Grand Torino approached, nodding approvingly. Well done. Your adaptations during combat were impressive, far beyond what most pros could manage against someone of Stain's caliber. I couldn't have done it without your training, Izuku acknowledged sincerely, especially learning to integrate the different aspects of One for All. As medical personnel tended to his minor injuries, Izuku made his way to where Ida was receiving treatment. His classmates' expression was a complex mixture of gratitude, shame, and lingering anger. Midoriya, Ida began, his voice thick with emotion. I was a fool. I abandoned everything I've learned about being a hero because of my anger over my brother. We all make mistakes, Ida, Izuku responded gently. What matters is how we learn from them. Tears welled in Ida's eyes. I could have died worse, I could have caused natives death through my recklessness. How can I possibly call myself a hero after this? By remembering this moment, Izuku answered, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. By carrying this lesson forward and becoming better because of it. That's what makes a true hero. Not perfection, but growth. As emergency services secured the scene and detectives began taking statements, news of Stain's capture spread rapidly through both official channels and social media. What none of them could anticipate was how the footage of their confrontation, captured by security cameras in the alley, would soon transform public perception of both the hero killer's ideology and the young hero who had defeated him. The final day of Izuku's internship with Grand Torino was spent in quieter reflection than the previous day's intense training and dramatic confrontation. The elderly hero had insisted on a more contemplative approach following the Stain incident, recognizing that Izuku needed time to process both his evolving abilities and the philosophical implications of the hero killer's disturbing ideology. Your physical adaptations are progressing admirably, Grand Torino observed as they shared a simple lunch in his apartment. But the mental and ethical adaptations are equally important for a hero of your potential. Izuku nodded thoughtfully, still processing the events in Hosu. Stain's ideology was twisted, but there was a kernel of truth in his criticism of hero society. Some people do become heroes for fame or money rather than genuine service. That observation doesn't justify his actions, Grand Torino cautioned, but it does highlight an important issue within the current system. As All Might's successor, you'll eventually need to confront these systemic problems alongside the more visible threats. Their conversation was interrupted by news reports covering the aftermath of the Hosu incident. Footage of Izuku's confrontation with Stain had indeed leaked online, going viral within hours. The adaptation wheel was clearly visible in several frames, drawing significant speculation about the nature of his quirk. Divine General, the hero with the adaptive soul, one headline proclaimed, accompanied by an image of Izuku with the wheel manifested behind him during the battle's climax. It seems you've made quite an impression, Gran Torino remarked, switching off the television. Your adaptation wheel has become something of a symbol already. How does that make you feel? Izuku considered the question carefully. Responsible, he finally answered. People are looking at that wheel and seeing something almost supernatural. But it's not about divine power, it's about responding to challenges and growing from them. That's what I want it to represent. Gran Torino nodded approvingly. Amateur perspective. Remember it when the attention becomes overwhelming, as it inevitably will. As they prepared for Izuku's departure back to UA, the elderly hero presented him with a small package. A parting gift, he explained. Something to help with your continued development. Inside was a modified support item, a specialized bracelet designed to monitor and record the specific energy patterns of Izuku's adaptations during combat and training. It's connected to a secure server that only you, All Might, and I can access, Gran Torino explained. The data it collects will help you better understand how your body responds to different stimuli, potentially allowing you to trigger specific adaptations proactively rather than reactively. Izuku accepted the gift gratefully, recognizing its value for his continued development. Thank you for everything, Gran Torino. Your guidance has been invaluable. The elderly hero waved dismissively, though a hint of pride shone in his eyes. Just don't squander the progress you've made. One for All has never had a wielder quite like you, with both the adaptation quirk and the wheel manifestation. Where that combination leads will depend largely on the choices you make moving forward. As Izuku boarded the train back to UA, he felt fundamentally changed from the student who had arrived at Grand Torino's doorstep just a week earlier. His understanding of One for All had evolved, his control over its various aspects had improved dramatically, and his encounters with real-world villainy had crystallized his heroic resolve. The adaptation wheel manifested briefly as the train pulled away, its rotation smooth and assured, no longer the erratic, reactive phenomenon it had been during the sports festival, but a more integrated aspect of his developing power. With each challenge overcome, both it and Izuku were becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Looking toward the horizon where UA's distinctive architecture was just becoming visible, Izuku knew that greater challenges awaited, challenges that would require further adaptation, growth, and integration of the powers he carried. The Divine General's journey was just beginning, and that's a wrap on Part 3. Deku's becoming something the heroes, the villains, and even the fans weren't ready for. But trust me, we're just getting started. Thank you so much for the support, Chrono Crew Legends. Your energy is what keeps this series alive. Drop your thoughts, theories, and wild predictions in the comments. I'm always reading. We're aiming for 100 likes to drop part 4, so let's show the algorithm what the Chrono Crew can do. And hey, if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Power up, hit that button, and join the timeline. I'll see you in the next one.